My name is Andy Fletcher. I am a locomotive designer, and today we will be learning to draw the way I do. If that's something that interests you, you'll find the world of drawing locomotives is very educational and very fun. As you draw locomotives, you learn about history, you learn about geography, you work on your math skills, you work on art skills such as composition, and as I go to shows across America, you may learn how to work on your drawing. You may meet me. You may, in person, get to learn how to draw. And you may learn a lot about the railroad industry in general. So let's go and draw. Hi, my name is Andy Fletcher, and a lot of people ask what basic materials and tools I use when I draw. And hot press illustration board is one of the main materials I use to draw on, and it is the main material to draw on. And basically why I draw on hot press illustration board is that when the finished engine is done, it allows pens such as these to apply the ink, because a lot of times it shows, a lot of people come up and say, well, I can draw the pencil lines, but I don't, if I draw on regular paper, I can use colored pencil, but I'm not able to, the ink doesn't take on regular paper. So that's why I draw on hot press illustration board. But probably one of my most important tools, if not these two are some of my most important tools, are the pencil, because the pencil does the whole drawing, it does the lettering, and it basically does the framework of the whole engine, and the calculator. Part of the problem is at the speed I do videos, it doesn't really give the calculator justice for how much work the calculator really does. Because a lot of the drawings I do are drawings I've done time after time, year after year, and the measurements are in my head. But the problem is that the calculator, like on a drawing like this where it says Florida East Coast, I really need the calculator to figure out where the word Florida fits, where the spaces go, where east and coast fit. I need the calculator to do the math of where the grills go, where the radiator section starts and stops, where the cab fits. And because of the calculator, doing the drawing teaches a lot of basic math skills, and it keeps them fresh in your head. And from that, basically, also there's a lot of pens that I use. There are kind of three different types of pens. Two are very similar, and then one's similar but different. Is that in the beginning I used to use water-based pens, and there's Mars Graphic pens and Tombow pens, which are both very similar. I recommend these for younger artists. Not that there's any real quality difference one way or the other, but these pens that I am using now, Prismacolor pens, are alcohol-based pens, and they're fine for younger artists, but the water-based pens, alcohol-based pens have a little bit of a scent, and alcohol-based pens, a little bit of alcohol gets in your eyes, it burns. So if you're just starting out, I would probably use, the water-based pens. But believe me, the alcohol-based pens, alcohol dries very smoothly, and there are a lot of colors in the alcohol-based pens, which in drawing trains, a lot of people will ask, ooh, there's Florida East Coast red versus Southern Pacific red. And these alcohol-based pens, it's very, a lot easier to match a lot of the colors. So, there's pluses and minuses to them all. And at times I use ballpoint pens, and at times I use these pens like these micron pens that do a fine line. And that helps do the separation stripes between like where the red stops, and there's a little white separator stripe in the orange. And also, I just sort of a lot of times keep a little scrap of color next to my drawing, where if I take like one of my pens, like right when I'm getting started, I will just take it and say, is that the right color? It's a lot like in house paint or something. If you're picking the color to paint the outside of a house, is this the right color? So that if you're committed to a drawing, you don't, end up painting it a color you don't like. And those are some of my basic tools. And this is my Pocket Pal template, which, as I was talking about the pencil, this is basically the pencil's tool that it really works with. And these two are some of the basic secrets of hand drawing. As far as this has a little 4-inch ruler on it. And through the years, I've basically used this template for 25, 30 years now, almost. And there are other templates there's nothing wrong with any template, but this template being about 4.5 inches long, it moves around nicely in your hand, and it has, little circles, which are good for wheels and that kind of stuff. And it's easy to see the drawing through it, which is very nice, because a lot of times when you're doing lettering, you want to know where it fits on a door, and you have a lot of measurements going on in your mind as you're writing words, or if you're measuring a door, you want to know how it fits compared to a grill. So this is just a very good template. And that being said, those are just some of my basic tools for drawing trains. Today I'll be drawing one of the new General Electric Florida East Coast ES44C4 locomotives. These locomotives are much anticipated and very exciting, as they'll be pulling a lot of the new Florida East Coast intermodal trains, especially with the expansion of the Panama Canal. These will be bringing a lot of the new business out of many of the ports in Florida. Now the first step in all my drawings is to put the rail line down. And the rail line is just sort of a point of reference. And basically, as you can kind of see, the drawings really just basically start as a very, very basic concept. They are just really this frame is just a couple of lines. And the biggest thing is that when you have a couple of lines, you really should measure and make sure that the lines are composed well, because the length of the engine here, as you look at the length of that engine, I have the lengths pretty well in my head, but the length of this engine should be about the same as the length of that engine, because one of the issues is that a lot of times when a lot of artists will come up to me and say, well, I want to get the cab right, or I want to get the intakes right, they just start to work on that area. And the thing is that it's more important to basically, like, you see that you start to block out where all of the different parts go on the locomotive. Like right here, this is where the rear radiator section goes, and then this is where the engine room doors go, and this is where basically the front intakes go, and then this is where the cab goes. And I'm just putting little dots here to just sort of mark off where everything basically needs to go. And as I put everything where it basically needs to go, the most important part of it all is that your eyes will kind of start to see that the basic size of the engine needs to roughly be right, because if you start to work on the engine and you work too much in one area, or you get the cab exactly the way you want it, and in getting the cab exactly the way you want it, all of a sudden you've worked for 20 minutes on the cab, and in working for 20 minutes on the cab, you then all of a sudden you realize the engine's too long or it's too short. You basically need to realize that it's most important to get the proportions of the engine exactly the way you want them, because measuring it out is really pretty key. Again, I've drawn these dozens and dozens of times. So kind of my eye knows about what size to make everything. But the biggest thing I can sort of tell any of you is the most important part of any of this is just to practice what you see in the drawing. Keep looking at how big is the cab and how big is the radiator section.